On today's Locked On NBA Squad Show East, what's wrong with the Cavs and Celtics? We were all talking about the Cavs last week, and all of a sudden, doesn't look like they can defend. We'll talk about all that and more on today's Locked On NBA Squad Show East.
You are talking ball with the NBA East Squad Show, sponsored by Game Time. From the Celtics to the Bucks, the Knicks to the Heat, and everyone else in the East. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bring you all the scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive look at the Eastern Conference. Trash talk and big takes included. No holding back. We're giving the green light. It's time to talk NBA East.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Squad Show East. My name is Nick Engstead, host of Locked On NBA. This is the Squad Show where we take over the feed of your favorite Locked On show. It's an open invite for any host to come in, talk trash, talk about anything that they want, about anything in the NBA's Eastern Conference. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Joining me today from Locked On Cavs, Cade Cunningham. From Locked On Celtics, John Corrales. From Locked On Pistons, Kuka Hill. And Locked On Pacers, Tony East. And more will probably be spilling in as we continue on. We'll probably end up somewhere completely different today, but let's start here, gentlemen.
We look like a full house. Look at us. Look at this screen. 3 bald guys with beards and 2 white guys with parted brown hair. It's a full house.
And we've got the 2 hosts representing the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference. But John, you got something to say about the Cavs after last week.
I'm only here. No, look, I'm only here because last week I was talking about the Celtics. I was defending the Celtics, and everybody said, "Hey, the Cavs have what it takes to beat you." And over the past week, I just want to say I apologize for what for downplaying the Cavs. The Cavs are clearly the class of the East. I stand corrected. It's the Cavs and everybody else.
It's been a rough week for those wearing wine and gold. 3 straight losses. The inability to play defense has been pretty prevalent, I think, for them, and they very much look like a team that's ready to enjoy the All-Star break in about 2.5 weeks from now. They've got 9 games between now and the All-Star break, and we'll see what they look like then. They have a game tonight against Detroit. Fascinated to see how that goes. But month of January, they're 28th in defense, and that is the thing to me that I look at as like the most concerning. I will say, like, this bad week, this bad month of defense does not lead me to believe they can't beat the Celtics, but I think it's a reminder that maybe they're not a team that's going to win 70 games the way they were tracking to do halfway through the season.
Yeah. A 70 win pace was probably like not this team, right? Not any of these teams, not the Celtics, not nobody in the NBA should have been on a 70 win pace. Not the Thunder, who I think kind of almost are still on a 70 win, but they're due for a regression. Like,
they don't play the Mavs anymore, so that they're good.
There,
wrong show. Sorry, wrong show.
But yeah, like this folds into a lot of the talk about what's wrong with the Celtics. Like, sometimes there are circumstances in a season that cause a little bit of a lull. And for Boston, they've had a little bit of that lull, and now it's the Cavs' turn. The Cavs are going through their bit before the All-Star break, and we'll see if they can get back to it. And we can start talking about the same thing people have been talking about the Celtics. Oh my God, are they going to start developing some bad habits? Is what we're seeing real, or was that just, were they just riding a wave?
But Danny, is it just malaise, or is there something with this defense that you're seeing? Because
losing
3 straight, 5-5, like it's
right. I think it's injuries too. Like, this is a team that right now is without all of its really good perimeter defenders, because Caris LeVert's missed the last week. He's missed all 3 games of this losing streak. Isaac Okoro has not played. He's played 5 games basically in the last month and a half because of a shoulder injury. So that's been a big blow to what they're doing defensively. And then even, Evan Mobley missed a week and a half with a calf injury too. So it's not just that they're playing bad defense. It's also that their best defenders haven't been out there. And that, I think, is certainly part of the reason why they have struggled on that end of the floor. I don't think it's the only thing, because we saw them when they were fully healthy in the month of November. They were 20th in defense. And then, they look great in December. They were the 3rd defense in the NBA for the month of December. So we know that they're capable of doing it. I do think part of it's bad luck. Like, if you will look at what the Rockets did against them in their 2 games, the Cavs did not allow very many wide open 3-pointers. And if you look at how the Rockets fared on those shots, their percentage of made 3-point looks in wide open scenarios is way better against the Cavs than any other team they face. So there's a little bit of bad luck, but I think a big part of it's just injuries and where they're at in the season. It's January. I think they're in the dog days, and it happens.
Danny, I have a recommendation for you. If you're going to lead with injured players' impacts on the Cavs defense, start with Mobley and not Caris LeVert. That would be
Okoro. I think the thing is, no, because the thing is, it's the perimeter stuff. It's not the stuff around the rim. It's the fact that guys are able to get into the paint easier. And that's not necessarily the Evan Mobley aspect of it. Now, once they're in the paint, Evan Mobley has something to do with that, but they're getting to the paint much easier than they have at any other point in the season. So like, that's why I led with that, because to me, that's the bigger issue.
Hey, Tony, you're understanding what kind of deterrent that Mobley is, you know what I mean? Like, it's easier to stay in front of a guy in the perimeter when you know Evan Mobley's behind you, and a guy who may corner will be like, yeah, I'm not going in there. So they turn back around and swing it. So unless you have a big that can pull him out, it's a little tougher to drive when he's in there than without him.
I'm glad you jumped in. Justin Garcia, Locked On Bucks. Are the Bucks scared of the Cavs?
I mean, I don't know. I think they would say they're not scared of any team. It does feel, I won't say it's wide open, but it does feel like the door is open for who's going to be the healthiest and who's going to get the hottest in the spring in the Eastern Conference. The Bucks have a long way to go to get there. I would still say the Bucks would look at, I mean, weirdly enough, the Knicks would be the team that they're most concerned with this year, because that's been a terrible matchup for them. It's been 2 blowouts, and I don't know how much you can really take from it, but the Bucks would be quick to point to, hey, we played the Cavs very competitive in the first 2 games. The third game was we expected to lose, coming back from the NBA Cup that they had just won. Celtics games, similar story. They lost all 3 of them. But it was really just a bad 6-minute stretch in each of those games that cost the Bucks. But the reality is you're still 0-6 against those teams. So they should have fear. I think they have the proper amount of respect, but I think they view it as, look, if we're healthy, we've been saying this for years, we can beat everyone.
Hey, Tony, I got a question for you.
What's up?
You know, Nick wants to talk to the Cavs, wants to talk to the Celtics, wants to talk to the Bucks. Last I checked, there's only 2 teams in the East that have 9+ wins in the month of January, and we're talking about Caris LeVert. We're out here talking about the Bucks losing to the Knicks. We're talking about the Celtics winning 70 games, and last I checked, there's only 2 teams with 9+ wins in January.
There's a problem. The Pacers, in their very most recent game, got their stuff pushed in by the Spurs, so they're not exactly top of mind for anybody right now.
That was an overseas game. It was international.
They did win the next one by 38, but that first one certainly soured some people, I think. Pistons are playing good.
No, we gotta stay together here. 9+ wins. 9+ wins. No one else has that. Detroit and Indiana. Everyone else needs to fall behind.
What's gone into the Pistons' success, Koo?
I mean, Cade's just crazy. He's really good at basketball, turns out, and people who haven't watched the Pistons the last few years are now starting to find out how good he is at basketball. The Pistons lost Jaden Ivey on January 1st and have continued to play their best basketball in like 7 years. So, and that has a lot to do. I know Danny's talked about how the Cavs defense has really struggled. The Pistons have the 3rd best defense in January. And I think that has a lot to do with Ausar Thompson finally getting healthy and finally being allowed to play. He's starting next to Cade now instead of Jaden Ivey. Their perimeter defense much better. They've been a lot more aggressive in the pick and roll with Jalen Duren defensively as well. So they're creating turnovers, they're creating fast break opportunities. And Cade Cunningham is so great that he's taken an offense that probably should not be even middle of the class offensively. He's just taking a bunch of shooters like, okay, as long as we can be good defensively, I'll carry us to what we need to be offensively, which is, I believe, 16th in the league offensively in the month of January. And that's with only 1 creator and 1 dude who knows how to dribble. So
let me tell you, from the Mavericks point of view, the one guy that knows how to dribble doesn't go well for a long time. It just,
how sustainable is what they're doing offensively, too?
It's not. I don't think it's very sustainable. I do think it's going to eventually catch up to them. But I've been saying that for 2 weeks and it hasn't yet. So it's eventually, you would assume that is going to, logic says that you're not going to be able to continue to do this. And you kind of saw it with the Pacers actually did it first. They started trapping Cade hard and really started getting physical with them. and they just realized, look, you don't have no one else out there that can really dribble, so we're just going to trap Cade and see what happens. So go ahead.
That's what I was going to say, is that game exposed my fear of the Pistons' regression eventually. They just turn it over so much, right? Like, you trap Cade and they can't create, and they just throw the ball over the gym. Pacers didn't even play that well, and they rolled in the second half because of that.
The Pistons have been really good. We'll get into them a little bit more, and the Magic have been really bad lately. Let's talk about that team a little bit more coming up. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Squad Show East brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds, things that you can use to get in on the action. See what's available at FanDuel. There's all kinds of things you can pick with these conferences right now to win the East. Celtics still the favorite, -110 to come out of the East. The Cavs +350, so there's a little bit of a gap there. And then the Knicks +600, and then Justin's Bucks +1100. So they might not be scared of anybody, but apparently FanDuel is not a fan of the Bucks there. All kinds of stuff you can get at FanDuel. Right now, you put down $5, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. If you win that, and you get those bonus bucks going to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL, official partner of the Super Bowl 59. All right, we're back. Locked On NBA Squad Show East. We've got a bunch of hosts here representing a bunch of different teams in the Eastern Conference. We're talking about the Pistons, talking about what's worked for them so far. And anybody like really believing in the Pistons this season, or is anybody really down on what the Pistons have done so far this season? They think it's fool's gold, it's just Cade and nothing
Wes Goldberg, you're here. You go first.
What do you mean buying in, like, as a championship team? Like, what does it mean?
How far are you buying into them?
Finals, baby. Why not? I think the Celtics are extremely vulnerable.
Oh, we can't do that when John just left.
I thought he left. Oh, I thought he was still here. Dang,
we missed an opportunity to go at the Celtics.
Yeah, matchup wise, I think the Pistons with Ausar Thompson could really stop Jason Tatum there. No, I think the Pistons are a lot of fun, and they're probably a good bet to make it out of the play-in mix too, because I think they're still a team that other teams don't really understand. Like we were just talking about,
they're not in the play-in right now.
Well, you know what I mean.
But I'm just saying, like, that's how good they've been.
They might need to make a move here.
Do we think they finish in the play-in, or let's go around the room? Do we think they finish in the play-in, or
can I ask
if they don't make a move?
Then who should the Pistons want to make the playoffs this year?
Yeah, they're in a position now where they're going to lose their first round pick no matter what, basically now. So now I didn't know how that worked. Go for it.
Past the point of no return. Yeah, because we had a meeting a couple weeks ago where you were lamenting how good the Pistons have been this season.
Because at that point it was like, okay, like, do you really want to be the 10th seed and miss your pick because the top 13 protected? But now they're 9-3. I think they're going to be a pretty good lock. I mean, there's too many teams in the East that are either one just forfeiting or two just injured, and it's going to keep the Pistons in a position where they can't. And with Cade playing how he's playing, they're not going to fall below 9th, I don't think. So it's just
to be clear, they're currently tied for the 13th pick in record. Like, if they just don't make the playoffs, they'll probably keep it.
Well, this is the thing. If you look at the teams behind them, like Miami, I'm sorry, Wes, is about to give up Jimmy. Orlando's
he's coming back on Monday.
He's staying. Sixth man of the year run's coming.
Oh my God.
You got Atlanta. That I don't really believe in. Chicago's about to blow it up. Philly's been dealing with injuries all year. Like, there's like 7 teams that just aren't going to be really trying. So combine that with the Pistons actively trying, I don't see how they could fall. So I do think they need to look at potentially making a move to either sustain the 6th seed or try to move higher.
Who do you want?
I don't have an answer for that.
What kind of player? What kind of player would they want to bring?
Give us a position.
The problem is they need another shot creator badly, because Cade is the only guy who can create, and like we were just talking about earlier, as soon as you trap him, it becomes an issue. Now, Gavin, I'm sorry, that didn't really work against the Knicks the last 2 times. but it's going to work most of the time when you just double him and get the ball in his hand. So they need another shot creator. The problem is, do you really want to go and give up future assets for someone that's going to take some of those ball reps when Jay and Ivy's going to be coming back next year anyway? So probably like a smaller scale move, but a move nonetheless. They have to do something. They got $14 million in cap space. They're not going to just sit on it.
Smells like Bruce Brown in here.
Hey.
I mean, he would help.
He feels like he would help everybody. Tony, you wanted to bring up the Magic. The Magic have not been good lately. They're getting guys back from injury.
And they got their guys back. Like it was weird because I got when they were bad and they were hurt, like they had no one who could dribble. And I don't even like, that's not a joke. Like watch the Magic. Like they can't dribble towards the basket or make threes. It's hard for them to score. They're really good still because they can defend, but they're not really good right now because their defense is a little worse and they can't dribble or shoot or do anything. And their shooting is not like bad. It's like, this is pathetic. Like 30%, I think they are. That someone should look this up while I'm talking, but it's so far below anybody else this year. It's like Franz is back. He's great. Paolo's back. It's been a mixed bag for him. Like the last time I watched a full game for them, they were in Toronto and Paolo couldn't even get close to getting them past the Raptors, right? Like
they're a team with a winning record with literally the worst effective field goal percentage in the NBA. 30.
I like a good amount, right? So like that feels so inconsistent to me. I'm kind of worried about them bouncing back. It's hard for them to get any rhythm right now.
Well,
Orlando right
chance
now
for a get right game tonight in Miami.
Well, Jimmy Butler's going to be back, man. There's nothing to get right about against
that. Vibes will be at an all-time high.
A get wrong game for everyone involved. Danny, go ahead.
The Magic already had their get right game against the Pistons Saturday.
To your point, Tony, Orlando is shooting 30.5% from three per the year.
Golly.
That is almost 3 percentage points worse than 29th. They're dead last. And like, you think of the difference between what OKC is defensively at the top and number 2, just like how elite they are. It's basically the same difference at the bottom in terms of 3-point shooting percentage and how bad the Magic are compared to the rest of the league.
They average exactly 3 fewer made threes per game than the Miami Heat do. And the Heat aren't like a stellar 3-point shooting team, but that's sort of, I kind of like, this is, I think we're a little too premature to be like, are we worried about Orlando right now? Because they did get a win against Detroit over the weekend. They've got Miami, then it's Portland, then it's Utah. Like they're on the road, but like
get right week.
it's a get right week, and they're getting their guys back. Paolo and Franz both had 32 points each against the Pistons the other night. So
let's do the same question we did for the Pistons. I'll ask Gavin. Locked On Knicks just jumped in. How much do you believe in the Magic, or like what are we talking about when we say believe in the Magic? What's their ceiling?
Like ceiling Eastern Conference Finals probably. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's probably all still a year away, and it feels like there's this weird exchange that has to happen where they need to add that shooting without sacrificing their depth, without sacrificing that defensive identity. So I don't really know how they strike that balance beyond doing like a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 type of trade. But if I was Orlando, there wouldn't really be any urgency right now, right? They have their draft equity. They have this incredible depth. And I do think it's something that is worth giving some time to. And you see that pretty frequently with teams. They get their stars back and they lose the rhythm they had because they were playing and winning in a very specific way. And you inevitably have to alter that ecosystem when you incorporate a Paolo, when you incorporate a Franz, and maybe long term, like both of them together isn't the right answer. But that's, I think, a conversation that is like years and years and years away.
I agree with all that, but they also have a worse offensive rating than the Wizards for like 5 weeks now. Like they aren't bad. Like, they're just out of rhythm. They're like, oh my God, we cannot put all in.
It's totally fair. And I don't think like the personnel is not ideal for offense right now. It's incredibly ideal for defense, but they just haven't had their team this whole season. So I think it would be a great series.
I don't think you come back from the worse than the Wizards in any category sentence.
Yeah, it's true.
Especially 5 weeks. I was surprised.
Their defense was so good for so long, and they're 9th in January, right? It's like maybe they just get their defense right again, and I'm like looking like an idiot with egg on my face. But it's just like if you can't score to this extent, it's so hard to beat anybody. Justin,
I think that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, go ahead.
No, I think that a lot of it has to do with injuries. Like Paolo was out, then Franz was out, and then Suggs got out at the same time Paolo was out, and then like Tony said, they didn't have anyone that could dribble outside of Suggs, and then Suggs went down. So then it's like, who's dribbling? Cole Anthony? And it's like I think they dealt with so many injuries at the same time that's worth really screwing that number a little bit. But I actually believe in the Magic still. I think they're going to be fine.
I also think defensively, it's worth noting, like some of that was survival. Like you watch that team, like they're playing on bath salts most nights, right? Like Jalen Suggs, like it is incredible that he is ever healthy because he's hitting the floor hard 4, 5, 6, 7 times a game. And sometimes you get your stars back and that can drop off just a little bit. I think long-term they're going to be incredible on that end of the floor, but it does make sense that you'd get those guys back and you don't have to defend like your life's on the line. And then you drop off in intensity just a little bit.
You guys are swaying me.
I think their ceiling is the semifinals at most with this group. Like what they're going to run into is what we saw last year too. Like you can't win a game -2-0. Like you're going to have to score, and you're going to have guys that can score in the playoffs. It can't just be Paolo, and that's their big issue. The defense has been, I mean, it's as good as advertised for every one of us that's seen them in person, because you may look at the Magic, and I forget who made the point, but you look at them and you say, well, how is this team going to score? And then you start playing against them and realize that Jamal Mosley's saying the same thing to you of how do you think you're going to score against this group? So it's going to be very matchup dependent if they can get out of the first round. I mean, I would start to look at some of the assets that they have just because of the foundation that they've built defensively, and guys like Wendell Carter too, who hasn't been as good as he first flashed when he arrived there. Or Jonathan Isaac, like who are you choosing between and saying, what can we turn this and some assets into to help out our offense? Because we feel like the baseline we built up and Mosley's coaching and everything else, our defense is still going to be hovering around the top 10 at worst. So I would leave no stone unturned for the offense if I'm the Magic here at this trade deadline, because you improve the offense, even if it means your defense takes a slight step back. There's questions with every team in the Eastern Conference that you could talk yourself into. Maybe we could be this year's Pacers, where we just get hot and we get the right matchups and we go on a deep playoff run.
Yeah, Justin, I was going to say to your point, you don't think there's any world where they could beat the Cavs after they got within a few minutes of doing that last year? Obviously, with some Cleveland injuries.
I still would say no, just because I really, really trust Paolo Banchero's ability to score in the playoffs. And Franz too, to at least facilitate and create shots for everybody else. I just don't trust anything else offensively there. And it's what the Bucks learned too, why they traded for Damian Lillard. It worked out one time where they won the championship, but that was almost entirely because of their defense. Like that's the big misconception with the Bucks. When you think about, Giannis and Chris, when he was in peak Chris form, like it was a great offense. It was a terrible playoff offense, especially in the half court. They just had an elite defense.
Can I interest the Magic in a Jordan Clarkson? Would he ruin them, or would he be great for them?
Isn't that like we have Cole Anthony at home?
Cole Anthony was not in the rotation at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I know. But
it's so that's the biggest problem with Orlando is you have to maintain your identity as part of it too, and that's like we keep talking about like expectations and the ceiling. Like who cares? It's like that's not really what this season is really about for Orlando. This to me, and I think this next stretch, now that you got Franz and Paolo back, is going to be so important, not for the season necessarily, but for like what happens next for the Orlando Magic. This season was all about like John Taffer, bar rescue, stress test, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, throw them in the kitchen, in the fire. Can you guys be our lead ball handlers? Can you develop that the way that Tatum and Jaylen Brown developed that in Boston? Can you just become that? Or do we need to revisit this a year from now and say, you know what, that's just not in the cards for you. Let's go out and get that point guard. Let's go out and get Jordan Clarkson, whatever the name of the person is. Let's go get that guy. For now, it's just, what do we really have here is what they're trying to figure out. And how far can we push this with Paolo and Franz to grow? And it's unfortunate that they were hurt as long as they were, but that's why the second half of the season is going to be so important for them.
What do we have here is a great question to ask about the next team we're going to get into, the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't know that anybody knows what they have going on there. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Thanks for joining us on Locked On NBA Squad Show East. We have a show for every single team in the NBA, including all the ones represented here every single day. Check the link in the description or subscribe to the show you're watching right now for great episodes on all these teams. Tony, you also wanted to talk about the 76ers. The question that you posed, which I think is a great one. Should the Sixers try? We're over halfway through the season. They are 17-27, 10 games under 500 with a guy that won MVP a couple years ago. And are one game out of the play-in right now. Anybody? Let's go with should they try? Yes. Anybody? Yes.
Yes.
Should they?
I'm yes. To be clear, I posed the question, and I am yes.
Okay, then who's no? Does anyone know then?
I need the definition of what try
season.
Look at Danny go.
This is a loss, man. That team is not good. They're not a good team, and I realize they beat the Cavs last week because they hit 21 threes, but you can't count on them. Like this is a team that I think this offseason should look into, okay, how are we going to pivot off of this? Because you can't count on Joel Embiid to ever show up and play. Like he's never healthy. And do you anticipate that changing as he gets older? I don't. Tyrese Maxey's awesome, but can say the same thing about Paul George with his health and his availability. Like this is a team that it is, for all intents and purposes, a failed process. Like they did not get to where they thought they would get. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
But what does not try and get them though? Like they can
Thunder a better
conceivably.
pick.
Well, right. Like I don't necessarily agree with it that we have enough of a track record, but they can conceivably talk themselves into, look, it's not ideal, but if we get the 8th seed and we catch fire and our guys are healthy, we like our chances. But with the absence of the first round pick, I mean, what is the point of punting this season?
Can I give you the case, even though I don't believe in it? Their 8th worst record right now, and their pick is top 6 protected. It's a hard gap to climb. It's 4 games away from 6, and that is a lot of losing to do when the 6th worst team is the Brooklyn Nets. And that's where their protection is. Even one spot worse, like getting to 7th worst, gives you a 1 in 3 chance of keeping your pick. Would I take a 33% chance over the chance they have of winning anything? I'd kind of shrug and think about it, but I don't think it's enough when you have Joel Embiid on your team.
What is a greater percent chance?
Huh?
33% chance they get a top 4 pick, or what's their percentage chance of winning a round in the playoffs? Because I'm going to say that's lower than
you also have to keep in mind the size of the payroll that they have and what home playoff games bring in terms of revenue.
Totally.
All right, we could talk about like payroll and Excel spreadsheets and percentage this and percentage. Like the vibes need to get way better in Philadelphia, and losing a bunch of games doesn't.
I don't
help.
disagree, but are we trying to say that Daryl Morey is not looking at a spreadsheet and keeping an eye on those
losing games
types of
now,
things?
Wes. They're trying to
It's their first world, right? I like this team does. This team needs to. This team can't afford to not. It's one thing to try and lose games. It's another thing to actively lose games, because that's how they got into this mess in the first place. Like the process didn't work already. Don't do it again.
It didn't work.
At least like prove yourself to the basketball gods and say something like, "Hey, we really wanted to, but Joel Embiid's knees and Paul George's everything and all this other stuff that got in the way. But we really wanted to try to win. I think they would be looked on a little bit more favorably there. They cannot afford to actively lose games again. That fan base will torch that stadium. That would be crazy.
Maybe we'll get another.
Anyway.
Well, the other complicated part with what you brought up, Tony, is every single one of those teams below them is going to just full on tank. And even the Bulls, who are just narrowly in front of them, if they trade Levine, if they trade for the tanker and Bradley Beal too, like the Bulls could drop below them. So there's no real easy path for them to even play the numbers.
Can I throw something out there? Because Danny mentioned maybe pivoting off of this whole thing in the summer, which I wouldn't be against. But if you're another team, like what's the team that trades for Joel Embiid at this point?
I mean, that's the question. Like it only takes one though. That's the other part of this, because that is
one healthy week, or
no one GM that says I can fix that guy, or if I can get that guy healthy for a playoff run, we can go win a title. Like that situation will exist somewhere. I don't know.
I have one idea, but Gavin's Knicks was like the team
to say he's too good of a talent for that to just be like, oh, he's not.
Cat's better.
He's worthless. But
Koo, do you want him?
No, but
Justin, do you want him on the Bucks?
Do we really think that no one would want Joel Embiid?
I think someone would talk themselves into Joel.
Like,
Tony, you might lose Miles Turner.
All right.
I know the injury stuff, but like we've seen Russell Westbrook traded 3 times.
Can we do
an MVP player? Like,
can I interest you in a Joel Embiid for Zion Williamson disaster swap?
A challenge trade?
You can interest me in it.
I would like think about it for just one in this conference. A team that is trying but is not doing very well, the Atlanta Hawks. What could they be it? Could they talk themselves into Joel Embiid?
Here's Onyeka Okongwu, DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
I mean, it screams a Brooklyn Nets move more than anything. This is how we become the New York team. Let's hitch our wagon to Joel Embiid.
Oh, that's
what about Minnesota? Anthony Edwards with Joel Embiid. Just go, hey, you know what? We lost Cat. That was a mistake. Let's go get an all NBA caliber center again. Let's do Embiid. It's gonna be Embiid and Cat. That's gonna be our team. We got Julius Randle's contract.
Well, Cat plays for the Knicks, so it's not gonna be Embiid and Cat.
What did I say?
I said Embiid and Cat in Minnesota.
Wrong animal. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Would Anthony Edwards pull a Jimmy Butler in Minnesota again? Like, would they have the same exact mutiny where he call Rachel Nichols? Like, where's Rachel Nichols working right now? Can he get her to come up and do a sit down interview again?
That's a great question.
Can I throw something out there? I don't know how much has changed for Philly. Like, obviously it's an understatement to say it's a bad outcome, but is it a totally unexpected outcome? Like when they signed Joel Embiid to that extension, like they kind of knew this, unless there's medical information I'm missing. They kind of knew this is what they were signing up for, right? And just get the 7th or 8th seed, get the playoffs, and like pick your lottery ticket that everyone's magically going to be healthy for 3 rounds. It hasn't happened in whatever it is, 9 seasons now. Maybe this is the year, but that's what they keep betting on. And like, hypothetically, if they're all on the court, could they make an Eastern Conference Finals run? Like, sure, they're as talented as anyone. Like, I think any team this side of Boston, like fully healthy, they would have. I wouldn't pick them against all those teams. I would say they would have a chance against those teams. Like, this is sort of the gamble they made. And I know Justin just made this point, but if you're Daryl Morey or Nick Nurse, like, if you tank this year, are you coming back next year? I don't know, but I don't think as much has changed for them as people think, because you knew this was Joel Embiid for a decade now, right? Like this isn't anything new.
And what were they supposed to do too? Like it is a bad contract. We can criticize it, but what were they supposed to do? We're just moving on.
When they did what they did this offseason, I think that they expected, okay, well, Joel Embiid's going to play 45 to 55 games, somewhere around there. He's never going to be in contention for All-NBA. He's never going to be in contention for MVP awards again. That's fine. But they thought, we can manage our way to 50 plus wins and we're not going to be the 1 seed, but we can be a home court team in the first round of the playoffs. And I think getting to a conference finals, which obviously they haven't done, or gasp the NBA finals for one point in the franchise's recent history, I think that they needed to at least do something in the regular season, because trying to navigate that, and I know that, Miami has done it before, but trying to make the finals out of the play-in is just not going to happen more than once a decade, if that, more than twice a decade. Like, that's just not going to be a thing that is a regular occurrence. And I cannot expect Philadelphia to be the team that does it after they've had no considerable play success in this era.
It kind of goes back to what I said too. It's like, this is an organization that has continually tried to outsmart the NBA over and over again, and it continually doesn't work. So just get your players, play them as much as you can. You don't play more games unless you play more games. Go play more games. Stop trying to outsmart everything that has ever happened. Just go out there, play the basketball games, put a good team out there, and try to just win it ethically. Like, I don't know what this whole Excel hoops, spreadsheet baby. Trying to shortcut stuff is. It's ridiculous.
You just said put a good team out there. That's the problem.
Well, their biggest thing was the Paul George thing. That, like, as soon as they realized that the Clippers were like, we know this guy better than anybody, and we don't want to sign him to a long-term contract, and the Sixers were like, well, we'll do it. Like, that was the biggest mistake they made.
I mean, I agree with Gavin that, like, once you have Joel Embiid, you basically have to sign up for this. Like, you don't really have another choice. Like, what's the better option? Trade Joel Embiid for less value than he is worth to you? Like, it's kind of the same thing I think New Orleans is in, to be honest. I feel like New Orleans is in a position where it's just like, look, when they're healthy, he's great. And if we can get him healthy for just one playoff run, we'll be straight. We'll take that playoff run. But if you trade Zion or if you trade Embiid, you're not getting the right value for, like, the player. You're going to get less value because of the injury, because of the contract. So, like, all you have is to hope for that one playoff run, because they are good enough to where if you do get that playoff run of them being healthy, then you might actually get something. So I don't think they really had any other solution. And I don't think that they have the option to tank. If they were to tank the rest of this year, I don't even know what the hell would happen. They do not have that option. If they did do it, congrats to them for having the balls to pull it off. But, like, I don't like.
And to follow it all, go to Locked On Sixers with Keith Pompey and Kayla Santiago. Great stuff all the time.
If the Eagles win the Super Bowl, it's much more palatable. If the Eagles win the Super Bowl in 2 weeks, maybe they can pull it off.
Guys, thanks for hanging up.
The strongest Sixers tank anti-argument is we can't let the Thunder get a top 10 pick. Go Sixers. Win lots of games.
We can't allow that to happen again. We can't do that. The city can't afford another scandal. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA Squad Show East. Great stuff all the time from all these hosts. We've got a daily show that covers every single one of these NBA teams. Locked On NBA Squad Show coming at you every week. Boom.